Hello and welcome to my channel. The contraption I'm going to show you today is a Nether Fortress farm. This is going to be quite a long video because there are many things to cover, but hopefully you'll enjoy it and you'll be able to watch it from beginning to end. So, first things first, why, you might ask yourself, why build a Nether Fortress farm? Nether Fortress farms are notoriously difficult to make, so they're a challenge. But beyond that, they are also quite an interesting contraption to have on a solo world or on a SMP world. The reason they're interesting is that they can make you quite a lot of desirable items. First of which is, of course, the Wither Skull, which you'll need to create withers and get beacons. You can also get coal, lots of it, and coal is a non-renewable resource that can quickly become annoying to mine. What you'll get as well is blaze rods. Blaze rods are a very decent source of fuel and have various other applications. A lot of applications actually. You'll also get magma cream, which you can use for your fire resistance potions, for example, as well as making magma blocks. You'll get tons upon tons of bones, as you can see here. You'll also get arrows, and also, as you just saw, you'll also get gold ingots and gold nuggets if you go the extra mile to include zombified piglins into your design, but more on that later. Now, the second question you might ask yourself is how? How are we going to build a Nether Fortress farm? And this is of course going to be the meaty part of the video. There are many things to cover. The first thing to do is to find so-called hard-coded spawn spots, or HSS. Fortresses are what we call structures, which means they only spawn mobs at a certain, very specific set of coordinates. I'm not going to cover extensively how to find those coordinates, as the video would end up being far too long. But here we have an example of isolated HSS. There are several approaches to find and determine where the HSS are in a Nether Fortress. My friend TJC has a quite lengthy video where he details one way to do that. The link is in the description. If you aren't afraid of a more coder approach, you can also use RufusAtticus'series RBedrock software, which can do plenty of things, among which find structures and HSS. Alternatively, and this is probably the easiest and most basic method, you could go into creative mode and use a bunch of commands or command blocks to automatically mark out the spots. In a matter of minutes, you'd have all the coordinates for your HSS. So, here, as you can see, we have quite a bit of mobs spawning on our HSS. Now, we have to make them fall down. And how are we going to make them fall down? Well, there are two ways to do that. The first and easiest way is what we call Instapush. Instapush works by placing either glass or a leaf block on the second block of a spawning spot. What happens is that mobs can spawn inside of glass. But then the game detects that they're inside of glass and rejects that fact and tries to push the mob outside of the glass. Mobs always spawn on the northwest corner of a spawning spot. So they'd get pushed in this direction. Here is north. If you wonder how to find north in the weather, there's a very easy way to do that. You just take a crafting table, you look at the pattern here on top, and the only place where you have a darker spot here in the upper left corner of these 9 squares, that's northwest here. In any other direction, here you have one dark corner, but you have 2 dark corners, so that's not here. Here, the place where you have only one dark spot, and it's in the top left corner, that top left corner is northwest. So this is north and this is west. And this works in every dimension, everywhere. So you can use it in the end, you can use it in the overworld. It works everywhere. In the Nether, of course. So it's quite handy, actually. So anyways, here is our northwest corner, and this is where mobs will spawn. And as you can see, if we look from above, you can see most of them are still on that spot. Here. Instapush works with glass, leaves, but there's an even better block to do Instapush now, which is Azalea. Azalea works exactly like glass and leaves, except it works at leg level, which means even short mobs like babies or spiders can be pushed by Azalea. So in general mob farms, outside of the scope of this Nether Fortress farm, of course, they can be really useful, and we'll probably see them come back in my next video. Anyways, so yes, Azalea, that's what I would use. We'd just place a bunch of Azalea here. I don't know why there's glass. On every single one of our spawning spots, we'll start seeing our mobs spawn into the Azalea and fall down to their death. In this case, because there's nothing underneath. So last one. Here goes. So if I go a little bit higher, see? They spawn and immediately they get pushed. That's what we call Instapush. Unfortunately, and you perhaps have already noticed that there is a small problem, or actually a big problem with Instapush. It's extremely convenient, but let me go to another world to showcase a little something. Here we have a world covered in Azalea. Let me remove that Azalea quickly. Here, the Azalea is out of the way, and now I'm gonna kill off all the mobs. Here. So immediately a new batch of mobs spawn. And as you can see here, not in this batch but perhaps in the next, the ghasts are not part of the fortress, so don't pay attention to the ghasts. And if you look closely, you'll see that here, without Azalea, we have one specific mob that spawns that never spawns in Azalea. There's one. There's another one. I'm talking about the zombified piglin. Zombified piglins, for some reason, never spawn in any of the Instapush compatible blocks. So if I place back the Azalea here and kill off the mobs, you'll see we will never see a zombified piglin appear. But zombified piglins are what is going to give us our gold. So we want them to appear. So we can't use Instapush. We're gonna have to find something else. Luckily, there's a very easy replacement. And that easy replacement is something that kind of simulates the way Instapush works. So let me find north. Okay, north is there. And it's pistons with tripwire. So you could have your piston facing either north or west, with your spawning spot being the southeasternmost block in your setup. And here let me add a few blocks to set up my tripwire trap. And then I need a little bit of redstone here. I'm actually going to replace these all with glass so that that specific spot there becomes the only spawnable one. And hopefully we'll see mobs spawn there and be pushed by the system here. So it might take a short while. This is on 61, so I need to be around here. Ah, here we just had one, and see, it got pushed immediately when it spawned here on that corner. As you can see, whenever I try to go to this corner here, I trigger the tripwire like this. So it works pretty much exactly like Instapush, except it works on zombified piglins, or it actually mostly works on zombified piglins, because there's one category of zombified piglins that it's not going to work on. Let me see if I can spawn one, but I'm sure you've already guessed what I'm talking about. Here we've got one. Here, this little guy here. the baby zombified piglin. It's too small for the tripwire to be triggered. Let me try and show that to you, but it's quite obvious. If you look at this, see, he's too small. So what can we do about these guys? Well, luckily there's an easy workaround. Well, somewhat easy workaround. Zombified piglins, being part of the zombie class of mobs, have a curious hatred towards turtle eggs. So if they detect an egg in their range, they'll go on a rampage and try to crush the egg into pieces. So let me show that to you. I'm just gonna put an egg here, and if I spawn a zombified piglin, it immediately goes to the egg and tries to crush it. And if I put another egg, immediately it goes to destroy it. And another one. So we can actually trick them into moving wherever we want them to go by giving them what they want, a path and an egg. But better than that, what we can do is trick them into walking into a hole. In order to do that, we need to make them believe there's a path where there actually is none. And user Tapeable Gecko found out that dead coral fans, like this one, perform exactly the action that we need. They look to mobs like walkable blocks, when in fact they are not. If I try to walk on that, I fall down. Same goes for mobs. So if I spawn a zombified piglin here, it'll believe that it can walk to the egg, and it'll try to reach the egg, but it will fall down because it'll walk on that dead coral fan. So we're going to do exactly that here. Imagine we have a kind of cage around our spawning spot, like so. Here we place our coral fans. Here we place our egg. Close off behind it. And if I spawn a zombified piglin here, even without this, immediately it tries to move to the egg and falls. Falls where? Into our trident killer. Speaking of which, it's high time we moved on to making the TK itself. So let's go. Here we are in a world where I will show you how to build the TK for this farm. This is our mock-up spawning spot, HSS here. And what we're going to use as a TK is a conventional Navy Nexus style TK, but in a slightly modified version. It's a modified version that was developed by someone named Tman, I think, which accounts for one big problem that we would have with a traditional Navy Nexus TK otherwise, which is XP orb buildup. This version of the TK takes into account XP orbs. So let me show you how to build it. First, the basis is the same as a Navy Nexus TK. And here we're gonna build it without observers. This would be your typical Navy Nexus TK with observers working like this. But for this farm we're gonna use something like this. We're gonna use a redstone circuit. I will come back to this later. So first, here you have your HSS. You need to come down 10 blocks from it. Place a placeholder hopper like so, and soul campfire on top of it. The reason we are using soul campfire is that soul campfire has the ability to burn XP orbs without burning the items. So the items would fall here and be caught by the hopper, and XP orbs would stay here with the campfire and burn, preventing buildup. And the reason we use soul campfire rather than regular campfire is that it emits a lower amount of light, which is very important because if there's too much light you won't get any wither skeletons. So here we're gonna place either a glass pane, or we could use iron bars as well, they work perfectly. Then around that we'll build our regular TK like so. Here we go. And then here around the TKs we have a lane for the redstone circuitry. And we have to be very careful. The reason why we're using redstone circuits is that, let me show you here, depending on where the trident lands last when you turn the contraption off, when you log off the game and log back in, it can fall down through this hole. So here it won't fall through the hole, but if instead of stopping at this precise piston I stop here, which means the last piston that hit the trident was this one, here you can see the trident is slightly above this hole. And if I log off and log back on, you'll see the trident will have fallen down. See? It's fallen down. And if I try to restart the contraption, it doesn't work anymore. The reason this happens is because the game, during the restarting process, puts the trident through a phase where it is in falling state. And if during the phase where it is in a falling state the trident detects that there is a hole underneath itself, well, it falls down. So we have to be very careful about where we place this hole. And the place where we need to put this hole is right in front of the last piston of our sequence. So, for example, here, let me throw a trident. If I stop here, meaning I remove this observer from the equation, so this piston won't be triggered, the last triggered piston is this one. Okay? And if I stop the contraption here, as you can see, the trident is on a safe block when it is in a stopped state. So here I could log off and log back on 10 times in a row. I would never have a problem as long as the contraption isn't running. See? And I can restart it without a problem. And this is actually the reason why we are using redstone circuitry, because this will allow us to see very easily where our last, when we daisy chain them, we'll see very easily where our last piston will be. Here it's this one, it's always going to be this one. If I start this and it starts moving, and if I turn it off, the last triggered piston is always going to be this one. And here it's always going to be this one. So our trident here is always going to be on a safe block during relogs. But there's a little thing that we need to pay attention about here, and it's direction of the signal. The signal has to rotate in the same direction as the pistons. So here we have pistons placed in a clockwise pattern. So we need to have our redstone move clockwise. If we place our pistons counterclockwise, like here, and have our redstone run clockwise, like so, you will see it moves strangely. It doesn't rotate like it should. Here it's moving properly, it's rotating. Here it's just moving from side to side because it's not triggered the right way. And what the consequence of that is that sometimes some items might not be pushed properly into this hole, or some XP orbs might not be pushed properly into the holes, and the killing process is also going to be slower because it takes longer for the trident to land hits. So you have to be careful about that. If your pistons are placed clockwise, the signal has to run clockwise as well. And here our pistons are placed clockwise, so we will run our signal clockwise as well. And remember, we want this one to be the last triggered one. The one with the hole has to be the last one. So this will be our first, second, third, and last. The repeaters are on 2 redstone ticks. And here our sequence is complete, and we'll add the pulse emitter, which is a very simple contraption that emits 1 redstone tick pulse in a set amount of time determined by a redstone clock here. So the redstone clock is on a 3-tick half cycle, And if I place a torch here, it'll start the system. As you can see here, we just have one redstone tick that is sent by this torch here in front. And this makes our pistons work properly. If I send trident like so, it's rotating like it should. So now let me stop the contraption. And here, as you can see, it has landed on the right spot here. It's not above the hole, so if I log off and back on, it won't fall off. There, so I can restart the machine and it works. This was our first obstacle cleared. So now I'll just finish off the TK by running a wall around it. Like so. And now we'll implement the tripwire. We'll place 2 pistons like so. Take a block here, the hook. Here we need to go 1 block farther to the side. Here, place another hook. Place the wire. And then add redstone. There we go. Now we can close off the perimeter so that mobs don't leak out. Here and above. And of course, now that we've done that, we also need to add our coral fans and turtle egg for baby zombified piglins. Here, and we need of course to close it off in the back as well to prevent leakage. So here we could have this spawn. We're gonna need a bunch of other eggs. This is Enderman. This we will see about later. This we already had. This we already had as well. And this. So here, let me show you how that works, and you'll see the XP is burnt off. Here, if I spawn a wither skeleton, here dies as well, and yes, these guys too. But not really. Because of course, we're not finished yet. Here, we got lucky. The baby zombified piglin died at the hand of the trident killer. But in reality, baby zombified piglins are small enough that they can... Ah, here. See? It fell through. And now it's escaping. Even if it weren't escaping, it would take no damage. Thanks to the fact, or actually due to the fact, that they are immune to fire. It would take no damage from this fire here. So again, we're gonna have to do something against that. We'll use exactly the same strategy as above. And make a fake path to an egg. We'll place the egg actually 2 blocks across from this hole, because just in case the baby zombie would fall in a slightly slanted angle and somehow land onto that platform. And I've never seen it happen, but you're never too careful about these things. So here we place an egg, and here coral fans. And that would trick the zombie, the baby zombie, into falling into this hole. And then you could have something that kills it underneath, such as a cauldron filled with lava, because even though zombified piglins are immune to fire damage, they are for some reason not immune to lava when it's in a cauldron. I think it's a bug. Let me show you. Here, see, it dies. So the baby zombified piglin would fall into this and die, or you could have alternatively a pointed dripstone block about 13 blocks underneath. And this would normally make the trick. See, it just died instantly. Phew! So now we're down. Wait, no we aren't. There's one more mob we need to take into account. This one. The magma cube. And especially big magma cubes. So how are we going to do that? Because big magma cubes are just too big to fit into a 2x2 chute like this one. So if I try to spawn a big magma cube in this, it's not gonna happen. See? It spawned outside. We need to make a chamber where we'll destroy its big size form and turn it into the more manageable medium size magma cube before we have it fall into the trident killer. And the way we're gonna do that is actually quite easy. We're gonna take fence posts and place them around our spawning spot, HSS, like this. And to this, we'll add some powdered snow. Powdered snow is efficient against almost all nether mobs. It deals damage to almost all nether mobs. So it's actually quite a fantastic block. So let me see if I didn't make a mistake here. Normally if I try to spawn a magma now, it should work. See, it's inside, and in a few seconds it will start taking damage. And very quickly it'll turn into medium-sized magma cubes, 2 or 3, which can fall down or die again to the powdered snow and turn into small magma cubes, which then always fall down. I must have picked the trident up, yeah. And there we go. So there we have it. This is our trident killer done. So let's go back to our Nether Fortress and see the end result. Here we have the exact contraption that we just made, with a bunch of small differences, but it's not very important. Basically, we have our egg and fake path, the magma cube dealing powdered snow, the circuitry, the holes, and underneath again this for baby zombified piglins. And this is all connected through hoppers, which collect the items to a fairly conventional item sorter. And this is with this specific farm has 32 HSS enabled here, or actually 32 trident killers, but only 24 are enabled, because I was making a bunch of tests to see how much of a difference it would make to have more versus fewer. And actually turns out, well, 24 versus 32 doesn't make a huge difference. So let me show you. This was after 1 hour of AFKing. Tons upon tons of bones. Yeah, everything is pretty decent. I had the numbers somewhere, but basically I think this is in the vicinity of 12,000 useful items, stackable items per hour. The 32 enabled version is around 13,000 items per hour, not counting the swords and helmets and bows and stuff like that, because that's destroyed upon arrival. These iron golems you see here are just in case, because, well, we all know this game is prone to have leakage wherever you have pistons, so in case there's leakage, these guys should be able to deal with it, because the only form of leakage we could have here possibly is probably small magma cubes, so they would destroy them very easily. But I haven't seen any leakage in a long time. So, as a conclusion, let me just give it a small whirl. You can see it's quite laggy because we have many pistons here and entities. But anyways, yeah, the lag is quite manageable thanks to the XP orbs being burnt. So while we look at the farm working here, let's move on to the conclusion. The conclusion will be, well, as you could see, this is a fairly complex farm to make. We could make it a lot simpler by using a two-dimensional design and a slightly less conventional trident killer, which I'll just show you for just in case. It's what I call the Mob Blender 2.1. It's very simple. It works like this. Here we can have the exact same redstone circuit as the one we used on our TK. And we could connect it here, and you'll see here it works like this. We just need to place a quick bunch of trapdoors, 3 exactly, and throw 3 tridents, 1 onto each of these trapdoors. And this, as you can see, is 3 by 3, so it can take down big magma cubes and big slimes as well, of course, very easily. So you could have that as your one and only trident killer on your overworld side in a two-dimensional design, and it would destroy almost all the mobs very easily. The problem with the Mob Blender 2.1 is that with time the tridents tend to be moved off by the mobs, so it takes longer to land hits. It doesn't stop landing hits, but it takes longer, and so it's slow. It becomes slow. So as the only trident killer in a two-dimensional design, it's very efficient, because most mobs, the chute, the pit, will be saturated, so mobs will push each other onto the tridents wherever they are. But in a design like this one, where you only have few mobs per pit at any given time, it's probably too slow. I actually did some tests and got about half of the rates of this farm here, this design here. So it's not very enticing. So yeah, we could make a very simple version of this by going 2D and probably have similar rates. But 2D farms, I'm not a fan of two-dimensional farms because, well, for obvious reasons. Two-dimensional farms don't deal with mobs at the moment when they are spawned. So imagine you have a farm like this but two-dimensional, so you only have a bunch of nether portals that teleport the mobs into the overworld when they spawn. Imagine now you have a friend who doesn't notice on your SMP, who doesn't notice that they are close enough to your farm to trigger spawns. They work for even something like 10 or 15 minutes only before they notice, and they're like, oh damn, I was too close, I was triggering the spawns. Unbeknownst to them, they have already created a true cataclysm in the overworld. It's become unplayable because of all the mobs and the lag they're causing. So yeah, two-dimensional farms, not a fan. Anyways, back to my conclusion. Yeah, we could make it simple, but the way to go, in my opinion, is this, to make it like this. And it is a pretty involving endeavor, because you need to clean out the perimeter, to find out all the HSS, and the trident killers themselves take some time to build. Is it worth it? Well, I'd say absolutely yes, it is, because the amount of loot you'll get from it is massive, and almost all the items are useful, and the non-useful ones you're destroying already. It serves as a fuel farm, a torch farm, a nether star farm, a gold farm, a magma cream farm. You can get so much different varieties of loot here that, yeah, it's definitely worth it. One little quirk that you just really need to be careful about is that you have to turn it on and off between sessions. If you don't turn it off before you log off, and this is moving while you log off, when you log back in, what will happen is that some of your tridents will fall through the hole, for the reasons explained earlier. So this is about it for this farm, I think. Lastly, I would like to thank two users in particular. The first one is Alejandro HCVA, who provided the base world that I used to build the farm. And the second one is Shuminator, who provided invaluable expertise on TKs. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, don't hesitate to leave a thumbs up. See you again for more Minecraft projects in the near future. Bye!